Hi everyone, I'm Matt and welcome back to Toylytics, where we take a look at the analytical side of toy collecting. In this video, we're going to look at the Mythic Legions Siege of Bjorngar wave and how those figures have been changing in price on the secondary market as of the end of the second quarter in 2024. So let's look at this wave overall. This is one of those waves that's kind of lost in the middle between the Advent of Decay and the Arethyr wave. Small wave here with only 5 figures, as you can see, and a few of the figures debuted at ToyCon New Jersey in 2019. Pre-order was in December 2018 for this wave. So this one is a little bit unique in that we have 3 Ogre scale figures and only 2 of the standard figures in the wave. So let's take a look at the data overall. You can see that not a whole lot of sales here in general, but in aggregate, the sales have been relatively stable. You can see that these numbers per quarter are relatively the same. And overall, we saw a little bit of a run on both of the towers in quarter 2 compared with how he's been selling recently. Not a whole lot of Faustia sales, so only 2 compared with other quarters where she sold a lot more often. Not a whole lot of Kurzogs either. And the other 2, the Ogre, Legion Builder, and Thwick, basically selling relatively the same as other periods. Looking at the sales by month, again, as we would expect, not a whole lot of sales overall, not a whole lot of sales by month. But it seems like there is a little bit of an uptick for some of these as of June 2024. So both are 6 of them sold just in June, and that was even exceeding, if you go back here, that was exceeding some of the quarters that we saw in the past. So a little bit of a run on both are becoming a little bit more popular at that point, and the Ogre Legion Builder as well, selling 5 copies. So not a whole lot of these, selling just a few per month for most of these characters. Looking at the average prices are in the gray bars. The minimum price is the blue dot, and the maximum price is the orange dot. These are just prices as of quarter 2, 2024, so just the most recent quarter here overall. So Faustia selling for an average of 120, although we only saw 2 sales. Here was 1 for 110 and 1 for 130, so not too difficult to see the average there being 120. Bolthor the Tower we saw, again, with that high number of sales compared to previous quarters here. The average price is about 115, high price of 132, low price of 78. Kurzog holding steady a little bit above 100, around 105, high price of 131, low price of 58. Thwick selling for pretty good price for a goblin, right? A lot of these goblins don't sell for that high of a price overall in a lot of cases, but Thwick is significantly above retail at $93. We have the high price of 126 or so, and the low price of 75. And the Ogre Legion Builder selling on average for 80, but look at the highest sale overall, so that's why it's important to look at the variability here. The highest sale of the entire quarter for this wave was 155.70 for the Ogre Legion Builder, and on the other hand, at the low end, selling for 47. So not really sure why somebody needed to pay that much for him, but on average selling for about $80. Let's see how these averages have changed quarter by quarter. You can see that Bolthar, even though he's become a little more popular, has kind of decreased in price compared to where he was selling in 2023 and quarter 3 and quarter 4. Kind of held steady in that 110 to 115 range in both quarters of 2024, even though he sold more copies in the second quarter for sure. Faustia increasing. She's at her highest price ever on a quarterly average basis. Kurzog kind of dropping in price overall. Again, similar story to Bolthor, where he was selling more consistently at that 120 to 130 range in quarter 3 and 4 of 2023, and now more recently he's been selling between $100 and $105 in 2024. So it seems like the price overall has kind of settled a little lower on him. The Ogre Legion Builder, as you can see that a lot of kind of outsized sales in quarter 3 of 2023, but in general he's been selling that kind of $70 to $80 range ever since and holding steady there. Thwick is selling at his highest price ever, so he's been 80 to 90, now a little bit above 90 overall. So in general, some increasing, some decreasing in price, but what's more interesting, I think, is to look at the individual sales of each of these figures to kind of get a sense of that trajectory a little more in a little more detail. So you can see here that with Bolthor, as we said, he was selling a little bit higher back in 2023. Now he's kind of settled into that range pretty consistently between about 110 and 130 or so. A few of them sold. This one's pretty good. Somebody snagged a pretty good deal there for a little bit less than 100, but in general selling for about 120 to 130 or so. So if you see him closer to 100 than 120, that's probably a pretty good price for a Bolthor, especially a new one. Faustias, we said there are not a whole lot of sales in this whole quarter. Here was one that sold for 110, and here was one that sold for 130. So not a whole lot to go on here, but you can see that back in 2023, pretty consistently, you were able to get one at least used. That's what a lot of these circular dots represent, between that about $80 to $85 range in a lot of cases. But more recently, she's really dried up. So if you want a Faustia, it seems like it's going to be, definitely over 100 for the most part in 2024. So I would say if you see one for anything less than 120, that's probably a pretty good price. Looking at Kurzog, we saw his average go down a little bit, and it's kind of interesting to see here that I think the average was maybe changed a little bit based off of some of these high sales we saw, but as you can see that a lot of times people were able to get him for that $80 to $100 price, and more recently you can't really get him for that $80 to $100 price, other than this used one here loose for a little bit less than 60. I would say more reasonable prices would be somewhere between about $100 and $130 for the most part. So say pretty much anything less than 100, especially in that 85 to 90 range, would be a good price for a Kurzog. Looking at the Ogre Legion Builder, you can see that we have that really high price here, but in general, he's been selling for mostly somewhere between about, at the low end, about $55 here for a new one. But in general, I would say about 65 or so up to about 90. So if you see an Ogre Builder for anything less than about, $70, I would say that's a pretty good price, although you might want to end up looking at the Ogre Legion Builder 2 that was released in the Reinforcements 2 wave back in late 2023. And then finally we have Thwick. As we saw the average going up, and kind of makes sense here as you can see the individual prices going up too. Back in 2023, pretty easy to get him in that $60 to $90 range in a lot of cases. Now in quarter two, lowest prices are 75 plus, and most of them are 80 to 100. So if you see one closer to 80, maybe a little bit less than 90, it seems like a pretty good price at this point for a Thwick. So that's it for the Siege of Bjorngar wave. I think some figures that are a little bit less popular, but still desirable, but you just don't hear about them as much. That's why I call this one of those lost waves, sort of in between Advent of Decay and Arethyr, and the sort of new versus type waves that were ushered in with the Arethyr wave. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you have any suggestions for future analysis in addition to what I'm currently doing. I'd be happy to try to take a look at any suggestions either in the comments, or you can email me at toylytics@gmail.com. Other than that, please like, subscribe, etc., as everybody always says, and I'll see you again in the next one.